MongoDB's cloud services. Let's go over section 2 and what we're going to be covering here. First, we're going to learn how to use the Cloud Manager monitoring service. This is the free tier of MongoDB's cloud services, and you can use it to monitor your servers for historical data. The second video, we're going to look at Cloud Manager automation and backup. This is a paid service that MongoDB offers, although there is a free trial that allows you to use Cloud Manager to manage your servers, and that includes both deploying and provisioning these servers. And finally, we'll look at MongoDB Atlas in the third video, which is MongoDB's database as a service, where you can actually deploy on MongoDB's own hardware and get access to your databases without doing any server administration yourself. So without any further ado, let's get into MongoDB's Cloud Manager monitoring. On the MongoDB Cloud Manager monitoring. In this first video, we're going to cover three main topics. The first is the Cloud Manager agent. So MongoDB's Cloud Manager uses an agent model to collect statistics, and we'll see how that works even if you have your MongoDB servers behind a firewall, as you should. Second, we'll see what it takes to actually install the MongoDB monitoring agent. And finally, we'll see how you can navigate through the Cloud Manager's performance graphs on an online system. So first of all, the MongoDB monitoring agent is a piece of software that runs on a server inside your firewall. This is just a very small program, and all that it does is it collects statistics from your MongoDB servers, and then it transmits those statistics up to the MongoDB Cloud Manager, which is running on MongoDB's servers. So the nice thing about this is the monitoring agent does not need to be exposed. It does not need to have a service exposed to the internet. None of your servers need to be exposed to the internet. Since all of the information is going one way across the firewall, as long as your monitoring agent can see the servers, it doesn't matter whether MongoDB's Cloud Manager can actually see the servers. So for our setup, what we're going to do is actually install the MongoDB monitoring agent on a Docker container. We're also going to be installing all of our Mongo servers on Docker containers. And to manage all of this, we've set up a Docker Compose script. So we'll look at that and see what the setup is here. The nice thing, again, about the MongoDB monitoring agent is, as far as the Cloud Manager is concerned, these are 4 separate servers with 4 separate host names, and it doesn't need to know that they happen to be Docker containers running on a local network. So here's our Docker Compose script. It's fairly straightforward. We have 4 services defined. We have the Mongo A, Mongo B, Mongo C services, and all of those are going to be running the Mongo image, which is just a MongoDB server image that MongoDB makes available on Docker Hub. And finally, we'll run the Mongo setup image, where we've got links to the Mongo A, B, and C servers, and we'll just use that so that we can actually access all these servers from a single command line shell. So the first thing that we need to do is actually make sure that these are actually running a replica set. And so what I've got here is I've got a bash shell that's logged in, so I'm going to go ahead and say mongo-host mongo A and --port 27018. And we have a connection to the database here, so we can show DBs. It's not going to work here because we have not yet set up our replica set. So if I jump back over here and look at my REPL set initiate, then we can just go ahead and grab this. This is going to set up the 3 servers. They can all see each other because they're linked here. And we've set up Mongo A to have a priority of 2 so that it'll be our master. So I'll go ahead and paste that in there, run that initiate command, and we can watch this. Takes just a second for all of the servers to come online. We can actually switch to our MongoDB, our Docker Compose window to see everything that's happening over there. Oh, and we just saw a log message that said that the transition to primary is complete. So now our replica set is all configured. If we do rs.status, we can see all of our servers are up here. Okay. So the next step that we're going to have to take is to actually install MongoDB's monitoring. Now, since MongoDB came out with the automation services, which we'll be covering in video 2, MongoDB monitoring is a little bit more complicated to set up. However, there are still some documentation pages that we can find on MongoDB's website. Installing the MongoDB monitoring agent with Debian packages, since we're using an Ubuntu-based distribution, that's what we'll be doing here. Now, if you'd like all of these resources, they're going to be on the resources slide at the later part of this video, so don't worry about copying down everything furiously right now. So if we scroll down here, the first thing that we're going to need to do is actually get the Debian package. So we'll just use curl to grab that. So I'll copy this command, and now I'll switch over and exit out of my shell here, and I'll get the Debian package here, and we've downloaded it from MongoDB's website, and we have to install it now. So we don't need to do sudo because I'm already logged in as root. So it's just this dpackage command. So I install it, and the MongoDB monitoring agent is installed. And finally, they want you to actually configure it. So we've got to get the group settings. Now I've already signed up for a MongoDB Cloud Manager account, so we're going to go ahead and use that account to configure all of this. So we've got to get the agent API key, and then we're going to have to actually configure the MongoDB monitoring agent config file. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually just open up that file in my editor here, and now we see we're going to have to put our MMS API key right there. So I'll go ahead and get ready to paste that, and then switch over to the Cloud Manager. So here's the MongoDB Cloud Manager. This is what you're going to see when you first log in, or it's going to be what you see 17 days when you have 17 days left in your trial at least. So the first thing that we need to do here is we need to grab our MMS API key. So I'll go to Settings, and here's our agent API key. So I'll just grab that, copy it, and I can paste it here and save that file out. And now switching back, we have to configure a proxy server if we need one. We don't need to do that here. And then it actually has you start it as a service. Since we're running inside Docker, we won't start it as a service. We'll just run it at the command line. So I'll do that right now. MongoDB MMS monitoring agent. Oh, and I need to do a configuration file and give it a path to the configuration file there. And it's conf, of course. So there we go. So we have the monitoring agent running, but we don't have anything actually configured, so it doesn't know what servers it's supposed to be monitoring. For that, we have to switch back over into the Cloud Manager, and we need to add one of the servers in our replica set. So I'll switch back over to the Cloud Manager, and here we go. So we go to the Deployment tab here, and I'm going to actually go over here to the New Deployment, an existing MongoDB deployment, so that we can do this manually. Well, now it's telling me it's got the monitoring agent running, it's on Mongo setup, and it's actually not going to let me do this with the regular setup, so I'll go to Advanced Setup, and I'll go ahead and manage an existing deployment. Here we go. So host name is going to be Mongo-A, because that's the host name as seen from the monitoring agent. And we're going to go to port 27018, because that's how I configured it. And in this case, we didn't run authentication or SSL, which obviously you should configure those in production, and we'll see that in the next video, how you can do that if your server is going to be accessible from the internet. But for now, we'll leave those off. I'm going to say continue. And so it's going to wait for a ping. At this point, MongoDB's Cloud Manager is actually waiting for the MongoDB monitoring agent to connect and send some server status. So that's what's going on right here, and we'll just wait for that for a second. Go ahead and try to ping that again. So it eventually timed out, and now we're going to ping it again. So at this point, the agent is reaching out to try to discover all of the servers in the replica set, and MongoDB's Cloud Manager will come back in just a second and tell us that it's been able to find it. And now it says deployment is found, so we can actually continue. So it's been able to find everything that was running. So here we can see we have Mongo-A, Mongo-B, and Mongo-C. They've all detected that they're running a replica set called RS. So we can continue here. And now it's asking, do we want to add automation? We don't at this point, so no just monitor. And we've got a little startup warning here. That's just because we're running inside Docker. It's complaining about the file system that we're using, so don't worry too much about that. So the next thing that we want to do is actually start up a stress test so that we can actually see some operations happening on this server. So in order to do that, we're going to use some of the same code that we used in the previous section to generate some operations on the server. So once again, we're in the Jupyter Notebook, and we'll go ahead and get a connection to the MongoA server here. Make sure that there's nothing in the db.stress collection, so import some of our little stress test, or define some of our little stress test functions. Insert a bunch of documents, and so those are being inserted into our replica set. And then we're going to go ahead and create an index so that we can get fast operations once those documents are inserted. And once that's done, then we'll be able to generate a bunch of stress on the server, and we can actually switch over and watch the server run. So switching back over to the MongoDB Cloud Manager, we can come up here and look at the metrics. So the metrics here for Cloud Manager are both on the server level, which would be all of these MongoA, MongoB, MongoC, as well as the replica set level. If we had a sharded cluster, there would be a higher level where we could get the sharded cluster metrics as well. So I'm going to go ahead here and click the metrics, and we can see a few graphs that come up. We don't have a lot of data yet because it's actually just collecting data with a granularity of 1 minute. It's going to drop to 5 minutes if I stay on the free plan, 5 or 10 minutes, I can't remember exactly, but it's going to be lower granularity if you stay on the free plan. Now if we leave this up for a while, then we can actually see these fill up with some operation counters. Pause the recording, and when we come back, we'll be able to see some of these being filled in with our stress test. So here I've let the stress test run for just a couple of minutes, and we can see that our inserts have been coming in at a nice clip, so 20,000 inserts or so per second. And here we'll notice these are the secondaries. It's not showing the inserts. If we wanted to see the insert traffic that's replicated, there's actually a different graph for that. So we can look at that in just a second. We also have the get more. That's part of a query command. So turns out we're getting 40 or 50 queries per second here, and then a bunch of get mores as well. So a few hundred get mores per second as it's running, and our updates were running at about 200 per second. Now if we want to see any more charts here, we can look at these as replicated charts. So I can look at my insert REPL, and you can see here the secondaries now have a bunch of inserts being replicated over to them. We can also look at other replicated statistics. If we wanted to look at updates, REPL, we can do that as well. And you can see those come in later as well. So since MongoDB is doing asynchronous replication, some of these could actually fall behind. Now one of the other things that I wanted to show here as well is the memory statistics that you might want to look at. So if we just pull memory here, then we see that we've got the resident and virtual memory that's being used by MongoDB. And we can also look at the cache usage. This is a Wired Tiger statistic, and this is something that you will see also on MongoStat. So we can see here we've got 364 megabytes used for memory and 11 megabytes if that is dirty at that moment. So as I mentioned, you can also get all of these statistics on individual servers. One other thing to note is I've set this to display the op counters on separate charts. Since we have such a higher number of inserts per second than of other operations, the inserts really just dominate that. So if I uncheck that box, then you can see everything else looks like it's basically at 0. So one other thing that we can do, if we go to the individual servers, we can actually look at several other aspects here. So they have a lot of other graphs by default that are set up here. So we can see the execution times of operations, we can see the network data and the memory usage. We can also go into hardware. If we happen to be running the automation agent, we'll get some hardware charts here. You can also install Munin and get hardware information there as well. We can get database statistics. If you are on the Enterprise Edition, you can get profiler information, which I'm not on the Enterprise Edition here, so I'm not going to be able to demo that for you right now. And also, if you want to look at the logs, you can actually collect logs for hosts. And so here, if I turn this on, then the MongoDB monitoring agent is going to be collecting log data. These messages here are from a previous run on a different thing that was called MongoA. So you'll be able to see some of those come in if you leave that on for a while. So if you'd like more information on any of the things that we've talked about here, there are instructions on installing the monitoring agent at docs.cloudmanager.mongodb.com/tutorial. There's also an overview documentation on the MongoDB Cloud Manager at mongodb.com/cloud/cloud-manager, where you can sign up for a free account. And also there's all of the documentation for the Cloud Manager is hosted on docs.cloudmanager.mongodb.com. So in this video, we saw how Cloud Manager uses the agent model to communicate server performance so that you can actually run MongoDB monitoring with a Cloud Manager even if your MongoDB is firewalled off from the internet. We saw how you can install Cloud Manager monitoring, and finally we saw how you can navigate the Cloud Manager and interpret its performance graphs. In our next video, we're going to see how we can actually use automation and backup, which are two paid services for MongoDB's Cloud Manager, to configure your servers and set up automatic backups and restores.